So look, paper 2, Jekyll and Hyde, the extract question. How do you prep for it? What do you do before the exam? What do you do during the exam when you're reading the extract? And how do you do the writing side of it? So we're just going to be looking at that today. First thing, you need to have a strategy. Here's an extract from the exam paper. It's a long paper. There's 4 essays that you've got to write, and you're given 55 minutes as a recommendation for section A. You've got to write 2 essays in 55 minutes, so it's very important that you don't get caught up, that you have a bit of a plan. My view is you should probably spend 25 minutes on essay A and 30 on essay B. I've heard people say the opposite. It's completely up to you, whatever works for you, but just make sure that you don't get caught up spending too much time on these first essays, because you're going to screw up the rest of your exam. One of the best ways to prepare for this exam question is to get to know the text really well. You're given an extract, but it's not from a text you don't know. So it's going to be from a chapter you know, from a text you know, with characters you know and places you know. And that's going to be hugely important for you as you look to make an argument about something. So spend some time getting to know these 10 chapters and be aware of what to expect if you get an extract from any one of those chapters. So a magical revision tip for you is to just write 3 bullet points for each chapter. So you'll have 30 bullet points, and you can test yourselves on that just over time, just so you're really familiar with it. You'll know which chapters you don't know very well, that you need to spend some more time revising. You won't need to reread the text to do that. Just look at summaries or quickly scan through different chapters. It's a very short text, so if you do need to reread it, fine. But again, just those bullet points will be crucial for you, so that you'll know all chapter 3. I know what just happened. I know what's happening next, and I know what Stevenson's trying to do in that chapter. Great way to prepare and really easy to do. I've deliberately chosen chapter 2 because I think it's a brilliant chapter, and it introduces us to Lanyon. We see Utterson in quite a vulnerable personal state. We hear about Hyde and Jekyll all at once. So it's all there, and I think it's a good one for you to know for essay B, as well as essay A. So I've picked something from the end of well, kind of the middle really of this chapter. And in the exam, you get given what chapter it's from, and you get given a brief little summary, which is what I've done here. So Utterson's found out that there is a close connection between his friend Henry Jekyll and a man who has a very terrible reputation, aka Mr. Hyde. So that's what's happening just before the extract, and that's what's relevant for you to know. But again, get to know this chapter, and as soon as you see chapter 2 or whatever chapter it is, if you know these chapters well, that puts you in a great position in the exam. I'm going to show you the question in a moment, but I think the other thing that you really need to be prepared for and be revising for is notes on character, which again will help you in essay B. But here it's very, very, very likely that the extract will feature a character, and Stevenson's pretty consistent with how he represents his characters. They all change, obviously, but the sort of the values and the concepts that they represent are a key part of those changes, and a key part of how they react and interact. So you will get these things appearing in an extract with Lanyon, even the final scene with Lanyon. You'll see it in his letters. So these are some things that should be tying into your writing and your awareness as you write about a character and look for these techniques. And the same with Utterson and Jekyll. These are just some notes that we came up with in class a few weeks ago. And again, with a bit more revision and prep and research, we could probably get a much bigger list. So you know, you could be flashcarding these. You should be very aware of sort of key concepts and key vocab, which again will lift the quality of your writing. So Jekyll, for example, talking about Jekyll, but also talking about repression or desires or his superior nature, his arrogance. All of that should be there somewhere in an extract about Jekyll, or in a letter that he's written, which it should be implied, it should be suggested there. So that's going to naturally lift an extract that you write when it comes to Jekyll. Same with Utterson, same with Lanyon. You might also get asked to write about Victorian London, or to look for things to do with Victorian London. If you get an extended passage of description, it's probably going to be London or one of the houses. If it's one of the houses, like the laboratory or Jekyll's home or Utterson's home, it's likely that will be more related to character. So as you prepare notes on character, you'll be in a good position to write about those qualities that you see in the houses, the location of Lanyon's house, for example, the way it's described as the citadel of medicine. Cavendish Square is a very sort of upmarket area that's well respected, and light and colour and crowds of patients and so on. Jekyll's house on a street which is kind of decaying and has some dodgy people starting to live in it. The way it's split, there's sections that Utterson's never seen, even though he's very good friends with Jekyll. Those sorts of things would relate to character or also themes. Victorian London, you can mention this sort of the clash between busyness and emptiness and poverty and wealth and all those sorts of things. So just be prepared that if whatever section you get, you'll be able to write with confidence and look with confidence for the things that you know will be there. And it's a small enough text, and Stevenson is consistent enough in what he does with these things, these characters and these places, that you will find these techniques, and that's gonna help you be prepared for this essay when you get given the extract. So another revision tip here is just to be prepared to write about characters. So research those characters, build vocab for those characters, and get a list of concepts that you're going to be looking for. For example, the question today will feature Utterson, and Utterson, we know, is extremely respected and extremely controlled and very, very, very loyal as far as his friendship, and that's going to be a massive part of the way he behaves and what we can write about him in this extract. And here's the question finally. So it's explore how Stevenson presents Utterson in this extract. Pretty straightforward question. I've just adapted it from another question about another character. We tend to see the explore how a lot in these questions. I don't think I've seen one without that. So just look out for that. And all you're doing is looking at how an author has done something, and of course how they do things is through language, form and structure. So just do remember that it is a question about an author, and it's a question about writing. It's not necessarily a question about Utterson per se, if you know what I mean. So you do need to make sure that you're linking into to the craft of writing as we answer it. And here's the extract we're going to use today. What I'll probably do is get a Word document version of this and put it in the comments section or the description underneath, so you can actually print it out and annotate it just to practice. Or for now, you can use your copy of the text. Really important that you do practice looking at the text and not just obviously seeing it on the screen. What I've also done here is just broken this text up into different sections, and I think it's really important that you remember that an examiner will choose an extract for what it has to offer you. And the question. So there's a reason why they've started it where they've started it, and there's a reason why they've finished it where they've finished it. It's not just a random selection. What that means is usually, this is my theory anyway, that there's going to be something at the start and there's going to be something at the end. And in fact, I often tell students to look for things in the beginning, middle and end. Often it will also involve changes in the text. So here, for example, there's definitely a shift between Utterson's mindset and his concern at the beginning, and then what's going on in his head, and then what he decides to do about it. And I think a recognition of that is crucial if you want to write about a text in a sophisticated way. And if we go back to what we know in our notes about Utterson, the things that we're prepared that we know he exhibits as a person, we can see that all of this stuff's very relevant to the passage if we're making an argument about how Utterson is portrayed by Stevenson. So just to prove the point that our notes and our sort of pre-preparation for characters are actually going to be really useful for what we actually find language-wise in a passage. It's going to take way too long to do a line by line of the whole passage, but I thought I'd take the opening 2 sentences and look at the variety of language that we're going to have and just how dense the language is and exploring a concept. I think it's really important to look at concepts rather than isolated language features. So start your points and your planning and your annotations around what you feel about a text. So you read this, we clearly get a sense of stress, unease, anxiety, uncomfortable thoughts burdening Utterson. His oppressive bed, his oppressive home, the darkness being oppressive and weighing on his thoughts as well, and his thoughts themselves being dark. So if we take the opening 2 lines, just from the adjectives and the metaphor there, we get a sense of discomfort. His place where he should be resting, the bed, is a great dark bed. It's this sinister thing that seems to be lurking there. Is burden of thoughts, a sense of being weighed down by what he's thinking. The to and fro extends that sentence and stresses that Utterson is tossing and turning and having a stressful time. Besieged adjective there, he is under attack. It's a violent image, and it's an image of being entrapped and encircled and not being able to escape. The growing of the morning has a sense of the intimidating to it. If you've been tossing and turning all night and you haven't got any sleep, the morning actually worries you. It should be a time of release and the light's arriving, but it's actually a concern for the day that he's got to face. And we've got a repetition of dark, the concept of dark, which is not just literal because it is nighttime, but it's also metaphorical too. His thoughts aren't nice. He's in a dark place mentally, emotionally, and he's also doesn't know a lot of information, so he's also in the dark there as well. So only two sentences there, sorry, but there's so much as far as the language goes. You wouldn't be expected to pull out all of the techniques in a piece, but I would say let's look at a section. Clearly here, Utterson's desperately uneasy. Where do we see that coming through in the language? And that's what I'd build my paragraph around. Sorry, I know that's a lot of text there, but I just thought I'd quickly type up an analysis of that paragraph so you can get a feel for where we want to be going as we pace through the extract. Obviously, you're not going to be able to go into this much detail for every single part of the text, so do pick your sections wisely, because obviously there's a lot of text in the extract. You can see, I mean, it looks like a lot. There's only 3 sentences there. I've just highlighted here the analytical statements that make claims about Utterson and what we know about him as far as the presentation goes. There is mention of language, but I don't think it's the major concern of the paragraph. The major concern is to show a sophisticated understanding of Utterson in this moment, and then from here move on to the next section and build on this point. It's useful to you to be aware of what you're probably going to come across in this text. So obviously contrast, juxtaposition, oxymoron, contrasting pair, parallel, structure, and contradiction. Just because of the themes of the text, every section has a ridiculous amount of these things. Even if the section we looked at just now, we've got a contrast between sleep and relaxation and going home, the homely quality of Utterson's house on a Sunday evening, and what he's actually experiencing. So there's a contrast there. So all of those contrasting techniques are things that you'll probably see coming up a lot. We also see a lot of light imagery with Stevenson all the time. Time phrases like all of a sudden, that sort of stuff comes up all the time as well. Look for structured features which create a sense of foreshadowing and summary before exposition. We've got that in this passage as well. Setting is going to be massive, and you've just seen that. So do have a look at any setting description and mood that's created through tone and description. Personification, zoomorphism. I put zoomorphism there because London's often described as far as an animal, not just a person. The crowds are described as growling and so on and so forth. So not just personification. Don't forget also just seen that the simple techniques are the big ones, and actually some of the best essays I've read to do with that last one, general sequencing. Why an author chooses to start in a certain way and then lead a certain way. Adjectives, verbs, those sorts of things are things to be sensitive to as well. I just want to say 3 final quick things to remember as you write. The first one is vocabulary. I could give this extract to any of my Year 7 kids and they would know that it features someone being scared or worried or uncomfortable. You don't want to talk about the obvious. You want to get more sophisticated. Vocabulary, as we've said, really, really important. So phrases like disturbed, tormented, obsessive, determined, much more sophisticated and open the door to that deep level, high quality writing that you want. So number 1 is vocabulary. 2 is to do with the style of your writing. So make sure that as you write, do these 4 things. We do this a lot in class when students write. We go back and we look at vocab, we go back and we look at quotes. Embedding quotes and using language from the text as we analyse. If there's a phrase in the extract that you can use, get used to just using those phrases. Be looking at the extract constantly as you write, and just stealing quotes. I'm not going to give you a number of how many quotes you should be using in a paragraph, but I'd say at minimum 3 to 4 in each analytical paragraph. Identifying language, obviously, and linking to the question. So writing style is number 2. The reason for that is in the mark scheme, the things that you're awarded for, focused and detailed writing, developed ideas, you'll get ticks for those if you use your analysis of language. If you're identifying language features, you'll get rewarded for that, and with your subject terminology as well. So that's thing 2. Just make sure that writing style, you're doing those 4 things. And the final thing is just to make sure that you're linking your points. Don't make disconnected points about a character or whatever topic you're writing about. Make sure that you link them, and your essay will be naturally more sophisticated. So every point that you make will increase the depth, so that it's a more high level essay, which is what you need to get as you get to that top level.